algebras, and welcome to your chapter 2 lesson 4 notes video. We're looking at dot plots and deviations. So we're going to talk a lot about standard deviation today and variance within our data and what that looks like. We'll be using the graphing calculators again. So you can see mine is right here under the document camera. We've also got this one right here. Notice that I've got my L1 already pulled up and it's empty. On here, if I want to make sure that's the case, press stat down to number 4 for clear list, and I'm going to second and 1 so I get L1 on here and clear out L1 to make sure that it's empty before I begin and have to enter my stats, right? Okay, so the first things first, at the very end of our video, when it came to creating our dot plots, we learned about standard deviation. And that standard deviation was this typical distance each side of the mean, one above and one below, where most of our data fell. Okay, the mean, of course, being our X bar, being our average. Okay, so what we're going to do today is we're going to use some data that are based on batteries, brand A, brand B, and brand C. And we're going to have a look at that data and look at its variance and its standard deviation and how that mean in each of these data sets gets affected and how our variance and our standard deviation get affected by how different the data is. Okay. And so usually how I start this particular lesson is we have these two dot plots for brand A and brand B batteries. And I tell my students, I give everyone a minute to look at these two dot plots and tell me right now, based on looking at those, if you were going to the store and needed to buy batteries, are you buying brand A or brand B based on these two dot plots alone right now? Okay, so I want you to think about that. Are you buying brand A or brand B? So pause it, look at your dot plots, think about it. And now think about what that first question says. Do the battery lives tend to differ more from battery to battery for brand A or for brand B? Which one has more what we'd call variance? And if I'm looking, just look at the distances on these dot plots. For brand A, the minimum is down here and the maximum is up here. But for brand B, the minimum life is way down here and the maximum life is way up here. So for which battery brand do we have more variance? Brand B. Okay. And this is that question, which do you prefer? Which hopefully you've already answered, right? But let's write down here, what do you prefer and why? I can't answer this one for you. This is a you thing. Gonna give you a sec to pause it and put your answer there. And then I'm gonna come back with what I say, and then we'll move forward, okay? I always love this one because it really gives me a sense of who in my class are my conservative people and who are my gamblers. Because my gamblers are always betting on brand B. They think they will be the ones that buy that one brand B package that has this 120 something life battery, hour life battery, right? They always think this is going to be them. And then I have my conservative people that are like, I want at least 80 something hours of life out of my batteries. I'm not gambling on this low number right here. So my conservative peeps always go with the brand A, which is also me. And my gamblers always go with the brand B, right? So I prefer the brand A personally because the variance is lower. So let's dive into the real statistical analysis of this. And it asks us here in number 3 for the mean of brand A and the mean of brand B, right? The mean battery life for both. Well, in order to do that, we need the actual data values. And the scale on these dot plots is not preferred in my mind anyway. So I use these values down here that are in the tables already. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to press stat and enter. And in L1, I'm going to put brand A. Okay, so L1 is going to be brand A. So 83 and 94 and 96 and 106 and 113 and 114. And in L2, notice I arrowed right and now my cursor is in L2. I'm going to put brand B. So this is 73 and 76. Now I can scooch this over so the light isn't hitting it as bad. 92, 94, 110, 117, 118, and 123. So notice there were 8 batteries in brand B that we were testing, and there were 6 in brand A that we were testing, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run one var stats on L1 first. So press stat, arrow right to calc, and one var stats. Now notice it defaults to L1, and that's what we want. So let's calculate, let's get that mean. It's 101. Okay. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to head up to my dot plot right up here, and I'm actually going to put this up here as 101. I'm going to put myself a nice little X bar right there. Okay, right there at 101. Now let's go for brand B. Now look, all you have to do is press stat and arrow right to calc to get to your one var stats. You've already entered brand B in L2. So this time, instead of L1, press second and 2, because notice L2 is blue and second is blue, and so that's how I get this in here, and now I can calculate that. So this time, I've got my brand B's mean, and by the way, look at that being lower. Its average is lower. That low number brings it down. Even if I rounded down to the nearest hour of life, we're lower than brand A, right? So let me put this guy up here. We'll put it right on here, right? Why not? But that mean is a little bit lower than the other. Okay? Now, what you do in number 4 is you take the data value, right? And you subtract the mean from it. So you take the data value minus the mean, okay, minus the average. So let's start with brand A. 83 minus 101, because that was the mean for brand A. I get negative 18. That's my deviation away from the mean. So that's how far away from the mean this was. And the fact that it's negative means it's lower than the mean. If I'm going to get higher ones, they're higher from the mean. Or excuse me, positive ones, they're higher than the mean. So now let's do that again. 94 minus 101. Another negative number, negative 7. Okay. 96 minus 101, negative 5. Cool. Keep going. 106 minus 101, positive 5. I'm going to put the plus because that way I know which side of the mean this is on. 113 minus 101. These are the deviations away from the mean. I'm going to put a plus because I know that this is on the right-hand side of the mean. It's on the higher side of the mean. 114 minus 101. There we go. 13, positive 13. These are the distances away from the mean that we are, and the positive and negative tell me it's lower than the mean or it's higher than the mean. And that's why it's always the data value minus the mean to figure out your deviation. Okay? So right now, what I want us to do is we're going to round this deviation to 100. And that's what we're going to use for battery brand B. And I want everyone to pause right here and do it yourself first, and then come back and see my answers on that. So hold on one sec so I can pause. Okay, here we go. There's my answers. Again, It's data value minus mean. So you can see that all the way through, I did data value minus the 100. We rounded to that 100 to use that as our mean. So these are the values that we got on each side, right? Well, there's this nice little complicated process that thank goodness the graphing calculator does for us, so we don't have to find what's called the standard deviation. Notice there's different deviations depending on the data value from the mean, right? They're all in different spots. Same here, all in different spots, right? So to get one typical deviation from the mean, known as the standard deviation, we go through this whole complicated process and come out with an irrational number, a non-repeating, non-terminating decimal, okay? We don't need to worry about what that process is to get it. What we need to worry about is we can actually find it on the graphing calculator in one var stats. All right, we already have the data in, so let's go. Stat, arrow right to calc. We want one var stats, right? Now I want you to take note of this. What is still there from the last time I went and did one var stats? L2 is still there. So this is brand B's battery information being used for L2. So you know what? Let's find the standard deviation for brand B because L2 is already there, right? So let's just head down to calculate. Well, we learned in lesson 3 that SX stood for the standard deviation, the typical deviation from mean. And it's, like I said, a non-repeating, non-terminating decimal, okay? So I know I ask for it here. I go through all the graphing calculator information to get to it, but right here is where it is, right? So, this should be brand B. Look at that. Nice little error right there. So brand B, let's put in this 19.441, blah, 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 right? Let's put that whole thing in, okay? So we're going to put the whole thing in, and then we're going to round when we get there. And you know what? Let's round to 19.4. So let's do approximately 19.4. Okay. That's brand B's. Now let's take a peek at brand A's. So I want to go through the process with you. Press stat, arrow right to calc, press enter for one var stats. And now we've got to change it back to L1. So press second and 1 to get L1 in there. And then we get our one var stats. And here is the one that you see right here. Okay. So there is the same one you see on here because I screenshotted brand A, not brand B, right? So those are the screenshots from brand A. All right. So let's put that guy up there. 12.1326071. And we're going to approximate that up to 12.1. So what we're saying here is that for brand A, the typical deviation away from the mean is plus or minus 12.1 on each side. And what we're saying for brand B is the typical deviation away from the mean, so the typical distance away from the mean, is plus or minus 19.4 on each side. Okay? That's how we're doing it. That's how we get these values. All right? What I want to do is just head back a page real quick. Okay? Just head back a page real quick and think about, let's just think about 100 plus 19 and where do we end up? We end up over here, right? So right around here. And think about 100 minus 19. You end up at around 81. You end up down here. Look at that. Are most of your data values between here and here around the mean? Yeah, 5 out of the 8.
What kind of business?
Now, let's think about the brand A's, right? It was 101. Let's think about 12 on each side. Well, 101 plus 12, that puts you right about 113, right about here. And then 101 minus 12, so it puts you right over, 90, what, 3? Put you back right over there. Are most of your data values between here and here? Yeah. You got 4 out of the 6 in there. So most of your data values will be in that distance plus and minus around the mean. Now I just want you to look at that distance. Look, because there was less distance total in my data in brand A, the standard deviation distance is smaller. And because with brand B, there was more distance around the mean, my standard deviation distance is bigger and it covers more space. So see that the variance matters in figuring out how far around the mean are we? Where is most of the data around the mean? Okay. And so that is part of it. And I know these notes look lengthy because you've got so many graphing calculator pictures. And of course, now here's your brand Bs. So, right, I walked you through your brand Bs and here we are. Oh, well, that's why. That's because we got both of those. Okay, so I wasn't paying attention to my own notes here. That's why this was all brand A. Okay, so let me fix this. Brand B, let's put that in there, right? We'll do the approximate right now. And brand B, the mean, of course, we'll do the approximate right now as 100, and that's what we used. Okay. Well, I was getting ahead of myself by putting it on the first graph, but we'll just use that, right? We'll just continue to use that as that first graph. Let me just fix this guy up. I was right keeping this to brand A. Jeez, you know, I should just trust myself. And this guy was 101. Sorry about that, kiddos. I should probably trust myself that, you know, I kept it brand A on both for a reason, right? Since that was the calculator screen to get you there. There we are. Again, I did what it's asking for here, right here already on my front screen. So on my front dot plot, that's all you need to do. Okay, that same thing that we're looking at. So actually, let's just transfer it, right? I've got it in front of me. Let's put this one right here and let's transfer the 2 over. So, okay, here is my mean up here, and we're on each end. Oh, hello. Down further than that. And then here is the mean on this end, 100, right? And then here to here is where most of the data falls. And that's what we were looking at doing. I had just put it on my front dot plots because I was trying to jump ahead in my world. I didn't realize I'd recopied that guy on the next page. So for brand A, how many of the data values fall within the standard deviation area? 4 out of 6, right? How many for brand B? 5 out of 6. So 8, my bad. 5 out of 8, right? Now, which battery brand are you picking? Has it changed for you? Okay, has it changed for you? Do you want the more reliable? Do you want the wild card? That's what we're looking at thinking about. Okay. Which one do you want and why? Now, what I also want us to look at, because I did mention at the very beginning, we would look at battery brands A, B, and C. And I have yet to talk about C. I'm sure you know. Here we are. Here's C. How's C looking? Which do you think has the bigger mean? We know what battery brand A's mean was. It was 101, so we know it was right here. But look at its data versus battery brand C's data. Who's going to have the bigger mean? And that's going to be brand C. Why? Well, brand C's battery lives are all greater than battery brand A's. So its average is going to be higher. Now, which one shows the greatest variability? If you look, we kind of go from, what was this, 83 all the way up to 114. Here, this has got to be around 98. And here up to what? 119? Okay, so just real quick, let's just do a real quick, calculation on 114 minus 83. What do we get? Okay, the range for this battery brand is 31. Brand A, it's 31 as a range. Let's look at brand C real quick. We're looking at about 119 all the way down to what, 98? Look at that. Less variability. Its standard deviation is going to be less than what the standard deviation was for brand A. Okay, that's what we're talking about. Okay, which brand do you expect to have greater deviations? Brand A. Because it has greater variability in its data. Okay, brand A has the greater variability. Brand A should have the greater standard deviation, or excuse me, the greater standard deviation from the mean. Okay, so we're going to use our graphing calculator. We're going to put these guys in L3, which is list 3. So stat and enter for calc. And notice we've got a list 3 over here to the right. So arrow to the right. And there's your list 3. Let's put these guys in it. So 115, 119, 112. Oh, I was right about 119 and 98. Awesome. That was really a guess just based on the poorly scaled dot plot, but those guys were close enough there. And now let's figure out the mean and the standard deviation. Let's figure out each of the deviations from the mean, and then let's say, what are we more willing to purchase? And I've certainly got my answer. All right, let's go with stat, arrow right to calc, and enter for one var stats. We press second in L3, right? So list 3 is what we want. And let's calculate. And we get an average of 110. So like we said, that average was going to be higher, right? That standard deviation is lower, much lower, right? So exactly what we thought based on looking at the variance in the data is true. Let's do an approximation of 8.2 as our standard deviation. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take each data value and subtract the mean. So 115 minus 110. Oh, how about we do 115 minus 110 to get a positive 5 here? That's a deviation from the mean. 119 minus 110, that's a positive 9 for deviation. 112 minus 110, that's a positive 2 for deviation. 98 minus 110, a negative 12 because we're on the low end. And 106 minus 110, and that's a negative 4 because, again, we're on that left side of the mean. So the lower end of the mean is going to be those negative numbers, and the higher end of the mean is going to be these positive numbers. And again, that's because the positive and negative are the direction on each side of the mean, right? So how far away from the mean are you? Which direction away are you? That's what that's giving us. So real quick, let's just bring this 110 right here as our average. And if we add 8 to each side, well, then you're right here. And you subtract 8, well, then you're right here. And notice 3 out of the 5 are falling in that area on each side of the mean within that standard deviation. What are you buying? I'm buying brand C. I'll pay another $1 for brand C. That's fine by me. The average life is way more than both of them, and the variability is smaller. All on that higher side. Brand C all the way. All right, guys. When you go ahead and try the homework, do make sure you've got a graphing calculator available either in your Chromebook, right, in the Chromebook app, or physically in front of you. So either one. Of course, I've always got my emulator here. I've been using the physical calculator because just for me, while I'm working right here, it is a little bit quicker. And then I'm not staring off over here all the time at you. Okay, so it's just a little bit quicker on this end, but it's exactly the same calculator. So you can easily get anywhere on here, just like you would here, right? Second and quit goes back to your home screen. Stat, enter, gets me to L1, L2, L3 to enter my data. Okay, you can, if you have your number locks on, by the way, you can use that little number pad that's on your keyboard too to enter numbers and press enter. So that part you can do on the computer graphing calculator or the Chromebook graphing calculator. Alrighty, kiddos. So now on to chapter 2, lesson 4 homework. Get that guy done. Let me know if you have any questions. Email me, come to office hours, whatever it takes, and I will talk to you very soon. We've got a review and then our quiz in Delta Math now. So we're kind of taking a breather, and then we'll get to creating more plots with our data. Have a wonderful day, guys. I'll see you soon.